Welcome to Between the Hashes, everyone. I have been so excited to bring you guys this brand new segment to the On the Pony Express family. This new series is going to entail a lot of learning, a lot of teaching on just the basic fundamentals of football. There's a lot that goes into it. Football is a simple game made complicated by simple people, and I'm just here to simplify it even more so that the average person can understand it a little bit better. Throughout this series, we're going to go from everything from getting in and out of the huddle, different coverages, different protections, the way that maybe we can even adjust to some of the best teams in our conference and some of the things that they do defensively. But I at least wanted to start with some of the basics. Even being an offensive guy, I will talk about offense and defense. But for this very first segment, guys, I did just want to talk about some basic offensive terminology and some ways that we can be successful when we break the huddle. To get us started, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to break things down into when you're designing a play, there are many things that goes into how are we going to be successful. There's really 5 things that you need to break down on what you're needing for each play to be successful. All 5 of these things, from personnel, your motions, your formations, the play has to have a name, and then the cadence that you want to run the play on, all will vary based on what kind of success is needed for each play. We're going to start today. We're going to talk about personnel groupings. I want to simplify that. You may have heard things like 11 personnel, 10 personnel, 12 personnel. And what do those even mean? What does that mean when an offensive coordinator is going 11 or 12 right before he calls in the play? We need to know who is going to be in the huddle whenever the play is going to be ran. So we got to have a certain number of guys in each spot out there for these plays to be run effectively. So I want to talk about personnel for sure as we get going here. And really, you heard me say a couple of those. So we'll start with 11 personnel. And whenever you break down what 11 and 12 mean, each digit is talking to a specific number of people. So if we were to call 11 personnel into the game right here, so that's the personnel. We are going to have 1 running back. That's the first digit. The first digit always refers to how many running backs are in the game. The second digit is going to refer to how many tight ends do we have in the game. Tight ends, fullbacks, really those non-traditional tailback kind of guys. So if we're to break the huddle and we're to say we need 12 personnel, that would be 1 running back, and that would be 2 tight ends. So I want to break down kind of how that's going to work. Let me get my eraser here. Because whenever you break the huddle, you have to have a certain number of guys for certain personnels. So if we break the huddle with 21 personnel, that's going to be 2 running backs and 1 tight end. Maybe you have a package where you're going to have Chris Johnson Jr. back there. You're going to have TJ Harden in the game, but you only want tight end. That's when you're going to run 21 personnel. So as we get going here, we can start to break down each position group. I do want to talk about what each letter means. In this series, we're going to talk about Y's. We're going to talk about X's. We're going to talk about H's. What are each of those letters? So when we talk about the Y, we're talking about the tight end. The Y is typically your textbook tight end body. I'm thinking your Matthew Hittner, your Grant Calcaterra, guys like that who are going to be a guy that lines up on the line of scrimmage, typically, or they're going to be maybe split out over here a little bit. I mean, at worst, we could see them in the backfield here. That is where your Y is going to line up generally. I don't ever want to say always, because sometimes you could have a formation grouping where your Y will end up lined up out here. But typically, your Y is going to line up right by the tackle, whether that's on the line or in the backfield. The Y has to be paired with another guy, and that's the F. The F is typically a tight end who is not a great route runner. The F is typically that would be your 12 personnel groupings. That would be a guy who is not a great route runner, is more of a blocker, in 12 personnel. Normally, that's your stone EB. That's one of these guys who's going to line up in the backfield, and we're going to use him as a blocker most of the time. Your F can get out in routes. If we're going to run some 11 personnel things, then your F is going to end up being a wide receiver because you're only going to have one running back and one tight end. The Y takes precedent over the F in 11 personnel and one tight end groupings. So it can be 21 or 11. The Y is going to be your tight end. So Y is your tight end. Your F is more of your blocker. It can be a wide receiver if you only have one tight end group, so your 21 personnels or your 11s. And then we get into the wide receiver, the X. The X is your typical wide receiver one, your Cortland Suttons, your Danny Gray or Reggie Robertson, really depending on the play. Both of those guys could always play X. They were always very good at that. Rashee Rice, generally, your X is going to be a wide receiver. You're getting super heavy personnel groupings. These can be any combination of guys based on the personnel. But when you say X, your mind has to go to wide receiver. Pair that with the Z, who's another wide receiver. You're typically going to have two. Your Y is going to go to the call whenever you talk about your formations. So if we have a strong right, your Y is generally going to go to the call. Your X is going to go away from the call, and the Z travels with the Y, generally. Your Z can sometimes end up being, a big body, like on the goal line or things like that, if you're only going to run one wide receiver out there. But generally, these are your two wide receivers. I think wide receiver one and wide receiver two. No disrespect to any of the Z's out there. There are some very good Z wide receivers, but typically your X is your number one and your Z is your number two. Your H is your running back. In one back sets, your H is going to be your running back. And in two back sets, your H is going to be the tailback. So if we have two back sets, so if we break the huddle in 21 personnel, that would give us two running backs. The H and the F would come in the game as a running back, because if we're going to go out of the I formation, which SMU typically doesn't, but this is how they would line up. Q for quarterback, F for the fullback, H for the halfback, or the running back, tailback, however you want to refer to that as. But these five guys are the five eligibles. So you got to have 11 guys on the field offensively. Here's our five offensive linemen. You get your quarterback in the game as the Q, and then the other five need to be a combination of these five eligibles. Now, you can get into some funky things when you break the huddle of, okay, we're on the goal line. We need a jumbo package. Jumbo is going to reduce the amount of eligibles to 4. You're going to bring in a 6th offensive lineman who is going to take the spot of the Y, which this is very rare. You can end up doing it when you get into your jumbo packages, but 22 jumbo is only adding up to 4 eligibles. When talking about your personnel groupings, your 12, your 21, all of these guys add up to 5. So 5 eligibles minus, if it's 12 personnel, 1 running back minus 2 tight ends gives us 2 wide receivers. And that math will add up unless the term jumbo is added into that. So if we're to break the huddle, we just talked about 12. If we're only going 10 personnel, 5 minus 1 running back equals 4 wide receivers. We're not taking away any tight ends. That's what the 0 is for the second digit. Always talks to the amount of tight end bodies that we're going to have in the game. So now that we know how many guys are going to be in the huddle from each position room, now we got to know where to get lined up. So we got to talk about formations now. We'll come back to motions in a bit, but I do want to talk about formations. You always want to try to pair formations if you can. You always want to separate them into families. Otherwise, it might be too complicated for some guys, and if your best players can't figure out the formations, it's really hard to get them out onto the field. So the way that we're going to break down formations is all of our 2x2 formations are going to start with the letter D. So 2x2 is going to start with the letter D. So we're going to start with double right. So right, like we talked about for the Y, is going to tell him where to go. He's going to be on the ball outside the tackle. The X goes opposite of the Y. The Z is opposite of the X. You got to have him off the ball or else he's covering up the Y and it makes the Y ineligible. So Z is off the ball. Y is on the ball. And then over here, you've got to be off levels as well to keep the F eligible. I know we talked a little bit about is the F a wide receiver? Is he a tight end? More than likely, doubles is going to be run out of 11 personnel. So doubles right, talks to the Y, tells him to go to the right. If this was doubles left, we would just flip everyone. So now in doubles left, the Y goes to the left, the X is opposite, the F goes over here, and then the Z is off the ball on the side of the Y. So that's doubles. If we wanted the F on the ball, so now we're getting into a little more run-heavy formation, we're going to go 12 personnel dot right. The Y is still going to go to the call. The F now is going to be on the line of scrimmage outside the tackle. This is where you would get Matthew Hibner and Stone Eby on the ball. This is your short yardage. This is your goal line. This is where you're going to really need to get those short yardage, hard fought yards. So again, X is opposite of the Y, and then the Z is opposite of the X. Generally, the Y will go to the play call, and generally, the X and Z are opposite with the X away from the Y. The reason I say generally is you can do some funky stuff. So if we are going to go with our Ds being our 2x2s in your just general formation, so let's say that we've got deuce right, so the Y is here, and now the F can be off the ball because it's deuce, not dot, but we can also go 2x2s that start with an F. That will talk to the F. So now, instead of dot right, we go flank right. The Fs tell the F to go to the call as well. So we can go flank right, we can go fit right, where he's now inside of the Y. Now we're getting creative. And all of your families can talk to these guys. So it doesn't matter if you bring in a guy in the off season, and the simplest way that you can describe it to him is, hey, D and F formations are 2x2. So again, if we go fit right, it's 2x2 with the X opposite of the Y. Now the Z has to know it's 2x2. These two are going to be on the right. Now I flip over here onto the left. How dangerous is that, getting these two guys next to each other? You can really start dicing up some defensive backs when you get your two best receivers on the same side of the field as each other. You can also split this up, men, into 3x1s, which we'll cover here in a little bit. But I do want to talk a little bit just about the motions. Most of the time when we're talking about motions, we're talking about pre-snap motion. So if I were to call 11 personnel in the huddle, so here we go, we got 11. So quarterback is there. Y, Mo is the motion. That tells the Y to start opposite of the formation. So if we're dot right, we would tell him to start on the left and then Mo over to his spot. That can really throw defenses for a loop. It will make them shift as a front, because we would start in X over here, Z over here. We would start in a 3-by-1 look. So you could say that the defense would be shifted over here to the left. And then when this guy mows across to his spot in dot right, it would force the defense to balance up. More than likely, you would see the safeties start rolling. It could really give the quarterbacks a better idea of what coverage they're in, because now if one guy follows him, so if they've got a nickel down here and he's man on this Y, when he mows across, he will follow. That is the concept of motions. You're really doing it 90% of the time to see, are they in man this way, or are they going to be in zone where they're just going to shift and rock and roll all across the ball? YMO is the big one that I've seen. It always tells the center as well to, hey, hold your water for the IDs. Because if we're going to be in, that would have been in 12 personnel, by the way, with the F right there. So that one's on me. But if we're in 11 personnel, let's say that we are in, let's go, H-back is there. So let's just get a 1 tight end personnel grouping. So the F is really a receiver here. So let's say that the X is here, the F, handwriting, the F is there, and the Y starts here. So we're starting in that 3-by-1 that we talked about with that nickel. The center needs to know that, because when they motion this guy across, if it's a run to the right, well, now there's going to be an extra guy over here. It's just something that everybody needs to be on the same page about, between quarterback, centers. All of the receivers need to know that as well. And it really helps tie everyone in onto the same page. So going from 3-by-1 to 2-by-2, you can really do the same thing if you're going to go FMO. So we're going to say that this is 12 personnel here. So you got 2 big bodies in there. We're going to say FMO to tank right. So D's and F's are our 2-by-2 formations. T is our 3-by-1 formation. So doubles, dot, 2-by-2s. Tank is 3-by-1. So tank typically is going to look like this. So you've got the X over here, and you've got the Z over here. So 3-by-1 is how this ends up working out, with the Y and the F right next to each other. Really heavy loaded on the right side here. If it was tank left, the only difference would be they would just line up opposite. All of these formations are not one-sided. So if we call tank right and tank left, we're all good. It just really depends on where you're at in the field, as far as, are you to the hash or to the boundary? Where are you wanting this run? Hey, maybe we're going to run outside zone a ton to our left tackle, who's our best run blocker. Well, we would probably want to run tank left there. So we could end up getting, just flipping these guys. So the Y and the F, X, Z. So run outside zone to the strength of the run, which would be tank left. You also have other T words. You've got tin is another one of those, TIN. So you've got Y, F, Z. They're just split out a little bit, and they're flipping is what tin is talking about. And then your X, as always, away from the Y. So as we get into these guys, we will certainly talk about more formations as we go. We can do an episode on short yardage where, hey, maybe we're going to be under center a lot more. We would get into our green rights. These formations that I'm talking about, when we always have it in the gun, we want to talk about gun, tank left and gun tank right. Otherwise, the center is going to assume he's going to be under center. So we got to know, hey, Kevin, or whoever the quarterback is, are you going to be under center, or are you going to be in the gun? Because it also affects the H in one back sets. If we're going to be in the gun, where does the back line up? Is he going to line up 8 yards in the backfield? Is he going to be way back here? No, that's silly. In gun formations, the H will be away from the strength. So if we're going to go back to double right, so Y, F, Z, X, we'll just take away this so we can all stay on the same page. We'll stay in 11 personnel, no motion, and then doubles right. Need to redraw that. So 11 personnel, doubles right. Where does the running back line up? He is going to go opposite of the Y, unless we call doubles right oppo. All that means is the H is now going to line up to the strength. So we could go out and doubles right oppo, and the Y and the H are going to be on the same side of the ball. That is applicable for all of our formations. So tank right oppo, the running back is now going to be on the right with everybody else, where we really have 3 guys to the strength. We've got the Y, the F, and the H. But the reason that you're wanting to have him lined up oppo in the gun, oppo versus regular, is when he's regular, we can read this backside guy. If we're going to run an outside zone or even an inside zone, we can now read this end man, and it gives us the option to pull it. Because when he's lined up normal, they're going to have the mesh here in the backfield. The quarterback is going to take the snap, and he will now read the end man right there and gives him the ability to pull it for a run. If we go opposite and, we're here in doubles right opposite. So quarterback, halfback, he's going to take the snap, and there's not really anywhere for him to read. So you wouldn't run doubles right opposite or run to the right unless he's pitching it to the running back, which is certainly something that you can do. But you're not really going to do a whole lot of reading if you're running to the strength with opposite. You would do that out of just the regular alignment, which it's always assumed that it's not oppo unless explicitly said in the formation. It's a little pop quiz here because guys got to earn their scholarship money somehow. We're going to break the huddle in 12 personnel. Deuce right oppo is the formation. We're not even talking about the actual play. Where do we get lined up? The formations and the plays end up being a little bit more memory-based. It requires a lot of studying in their respective film room as they go between the hashes on a daily basis. But deuce right, if we go back to our rules, 12 personnel, so 1 running back and 2 tight ends. So 12 personnel, 1 running back. Hey, it's oppo. If I'm the running back, I know a strong formation. Hey, I'm going to line to the strength. So the H is lined up right here. Induce right, right talks to the Y. He is on the ball. Y is lined up right. H is lined up right. Where does the F line up? So the F generally induce, with it being 2 by 2. So we've got the X opposite of the Y. The Z is opposite of the X unless told otherwise. And deuce tells the F to line up opposite of the Y on the ball. In the box off the ball. So he won't be on the ball, he'll be in the box, but he will be just off the ball, aligned just off the tackle's hip. That is deuce right oppo. So we could do this exercise out of a bunch of different formations where we can really go test, hey, do guys know how to line up? So now let's go for 21. Let's go dot right. So 21 personnel. So we've got 2 running backs and 1 tight end. So dot right, hey, this is a 2 guys on the line of scrimmage formation. The Y goes from the right, he goes to the strength. The fullback in a 2-back set plays the F, who will line up on the line of scrimmage. And then the quarterback is going to be, here it would be gun, dot right. Quarterback will be in the gun, and then the H will be opposite. Guys, I hope this cleared up a little bit of the confusion about, hey, what are personnel groupings? How do you know about the formations, where to line up? There are rules to this. We never want to just teach memory. We want to teach rules. So D is 2 by 2. T is 3 by 1. Right tells the Y to go to the strength. The X goes opposite of the Y, so on and so forth. So that way you're able to easily break it down for these guys in the meeting rooms as they're going into a long season up ahead of just some easy things that if they forget, well, they can just go back to their rules. And it will be the same thing as we talk about plays, as we talk about cadences, and we'll talk about this on defense as well. But today, guys, I hope you enjoyed the very first episode of Between the Hashes. I'm looking forward to bringing you guys a lot more of this very soon, as we will cover defensive alignments next time. Thanks so much.